But I have an interesting parallel to draw from you. Does anybody know who Bill Kerrigan is in the history of the state of Maine? Bill Kerrigan came from Lewiston, Maine. He was the manager of the Red Sox when the Red Sox won in 1915 and 1916. We won back-to-back World Series. But from 1918 until 2004, the Red Sox became the lovable losers of New England. We loved them, we liked them, the brand was great, but we weren't going to see them enough. They weren't getting enough revenue to buy the players that they needed to win. They were the also-rans. You know, Johnny Pesky in 48, and somehow we lost to the Mets in 86, and it just seemed that Carlton Fisk couldn't pull it off 10 years before that, and it just seemed like the Red Sox were never going to win. And the humiliation that we suffered at the hands of the Yankees when we thought we were going to get back to the World Series in 2003, and we lost that game that we were winning 4-2. And Grady Little, remember, walked out onto the mound and left Pedro Martinez in the ground. And if you could hear silence in New England, when Grady Little left Pedro Martinez in, that was probably the first time that everybody took the same collective breath in, and there was nothing being said. A year later, we were down 3-0. We were in Fenway Park. It was looking like we were never going to win again, and Curt Schilling, before the game, was asked, no one has ever come back in a 7-game series in baseball from being 3 games down. How are you guys going to do it? Because the guys at that point were totally loose, and there's some stories about some Jack Daniels that I will neither confirm or deny, but I was there. The interesting thing is that what Curt Schilling said, and Curt always has a lot to say, Curt Schilling said, "Why not us?" And in the 6th inning, we were losing 4-2, but somehow we tied the game. We won in the bottom of the 12th, 5-4. The rest is history. And the Red Sox went from being the lovable losers to world champions. And we won again in 2007, and we legitimized baseball. And people now not only talk about the Red Sox the way they had for that 86 years in between, but the people actually go to the games and will pay an enormous amount of money to see a team that they actually believe that they not only like, but they believe is going to win. And those 3 words, "why not us," are the words that we need to adopt in the state of Maine. Because there's no reason that we cannot fix our tax problems, fix our insurance problems, fix our energy problems, change our rules and regulations, and improve our education so that we don't become as desirable, if not more desirable, than anybody else in the United States. Now I'm going to do a little math because I think it's important to understand one more piece of this puzzle, and then I will look forward to answering any questions that you may have. The first number that I'm going to put on the board is $650 million that the state of Maine received from the federal government about a year ago that was sent here for quote-unquote economic stimulus. I can tell you that probably over 80% of that $650 million went to fund existing programs that were running out of money because we had bad tax, bad insurance, bad rules and regulations, so on and so forth. That it didn't go to stimulate anything new. That $35 million of that went to pave a piece of highway that really didn't need to be paved. And $40 million of it went to insulate some homes that are still burning number 2 heating oil, but because the price went up, they're still spending more money on heating oil than they were spending before they were insulated. The second number that I'm going to put on the board is $150 million. The $150 million came from what we call the rainy day account. That $150 million was put away for the state of Maine for an emergency, to be used for something that would be very important for us, to be used for some purpose other than balancing the budget. That's why they call it the rainy day fund. We need we need a pot of money to be able to do something with. We have a great idea. That's that 150. And the third number that I'll put on the board is $130 million that the state of Maine received as a one-time payment for 8 years to sell the state liquor stores. The reason that I'm putting these numbers on the board is because at some level, part or all of that money could have been used to stimulate job growth creatively inside the state of Maine. Now, if you're doing the math, you can quickly see that that's $930 million, right? Almost $1 billion. I'm not gonna round it off, but $930 million. That money has sort of gone through the state of Maine and not really done very much that we want to talk about. Now, here's the kicker. We've lost 32,000 jobs since the recession started. And the recession in Maine started about 24 months before it started for the rest of the country. And most economic prognosticators told the state of Maine that we were in technical recession 24 months before the United States went into its recession. Have you all heard of Jackson Labs? Sometimes referred to as the Mouse House? Okay. This is one of the institutions that Maine is and should be most proud of. It's odd that it started in Maine. There's 1,200 employees, 600 techs, 600 support people. One of the most proud businesses we have in the state of Maine. Well, I got some good news and some bad news. 1,200 jobs are staying in Maine. I got some bad news. State of Florida offered Jackson Labs in tax benefits, property benefits, property, grants, training, labor, the equivalent of $350 million to build, where'd my pen go, a facility in Florida to hire 2,000 people. That's 2,000 jobs. But that's not what we're really talking about. Because Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Bristol Myers, and 3 other drug companies, all willing to invest and put research facilities next to them to use the genetically engineered mice, mean that Florida, for their $350 million, is going to get a total of 10,000 jobs. And those 10,000 jobs are going to stay there for decades and decades. Meanwhile, we have put ourselves in an economic position where we can't even consider doing that, because our answer has been the status quo. And for me, that's not good enough. And the good news is that there will be other opportunities like this going forward if we put ourselves in a position to be successful. And why we don't have a $350 million grant program going to a company like that so that we can create 10,000 jobs in a medical center in southern Maine is beyond me. Why we have figured out how to extend rail service to Brunswick, but the train only goes 49 miles an hour and no one's going to ride it, when 100 years ago, if you went from New York to Chicago, you could go on a train that went 105 miles an hour. That was over a century ago. We had the technology to move people on rail at 100 miles an hour. Now we can only do it at 49 miles an hour. Everybody runs around and says, rail doesn't work. Well, of course rail doesn't work. When you can drive your grandmother's 58 Falcon to Boston at less cost and faster than you could ride the train, you're not going to ride the train. So I submit to you that we are the masters of our own destiny, that we are not encumbered by the past, that we need to be opportunistic, And that the best thing we can get from history is to understand what we shouldn't do, as opposed to what we should do. And I'm very excited about the opportunity to work for you, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun to make these changes. And I don't want to lay anybody off, and I don't want to fire anybody. I just want to change the way that we run our production facility. I want to change the way we run our government factory. And I want a lot of happy employees, and I want a lot of people moving into the state of Maine, and I want a lot of job opportunities for our young people, and I don't want our #1 export to be our kids anymore.